Thank you, Sadie, for that introduction. In Anthroposophy, these days just after the autumn equinox, are celebrated as Michaelmas. Michael is one of four significant archangels who each rule one of the four seasons. Each has a primary festival: Christmas, Easter, St. John's Day, and the forgotten one, Michaelmas. This is a time of facing riddles. Even the name Michael is a riddle, for it is a question: who is like God? Back in June and July, we felt almost at one with nature. But now, gone away is the bluebird, and everywhere we see plants going to seed and fading away. If it hasn't come already, we know a frost is soon. Cold and death are lurking. We realize I am different from nature. I do not fade away or drop my leaves. I must face winter as a human being. Interestingly, this is the season when Rudolf Steiner spoke about technology's role in human evolution. I will speak about that at a future date. Tonight, I will give an overview of Rudolf Steiner's view on human and earthly evolution. The book cover I show here is for those who might wish to delve into this topic more deeply. In high school physics and chemistry courses, we learned that there are four states of matter. Let's take an example: the ice cube. Water, as ice, is solid. As the ice warms, it melts to a liquid. If we heat this liquid, it becomes steam and can exist in the air. When we warm elements much further, they come to the state called plasma. These four states relate to the four elements that were foundational to ancient philosophers, namely earth, water, air, and fire. The anthroposophical view of physical evolution follows the progression from first fire or warmth to the addition of air, to the addition of water, and now to the addition of earth. Might there be an evolution that went from fire to air to water to finally earth? Interestingly, just yesterday, it was reported that Earth is the only planet in our solar system with fire. These scientists conclude that fire cannot exist without life. In the model of the ancients, fire is not only physical, but also of the next set of states, those of life forces, etheric forces, namely warmth ether, light ether, tone ether, and life ether. We'll not have time to properly explain these four ethers, unfortunately. But in astrophysics, there is a branch called metallicity, which works to describe how it is that we find heavy metals on Earth. It claims that following the Big Bang, there came into existence the first few elements found in the periodic chart, namely hydrogen and helium, and possibly a few more, such as lithium, beryllium, and maybe even boron. From this, stars were born. Each star was formed with only these elements, and it quickly went through its stellar evolution to conclude with a supernova. Most of these supernovas would have fused together some of the existing elements into the next stage: the gases, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and neon. A new star then formed, which later exploded as a supernova, resulting in the so-called period 3 elements: sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, and argon, plus perhaps some period 4 elements, such as potassium and calcium. Then another star formed, evolved, and became a supernova. This last supernova formed the metals that we find titanium, copper, and iron, and the other heavier elements of the periodic chart, such as cadmium, antimony, gold, mercury, lead, uranium, and so on. So modern science has come to largely agree with spiritual science on the number of prior cosmic systems. This is the beginning of a U-shaped diagram that shows cosmic evolution. The first four cosmic, or Steiner called them planetary conditions, were evolutionary steps towards the physical matter. Matter, if we can call it as such, would be first in a plasma state, then gaseous, then liquid, and finally solid could appear only on Earth evolution. Each cosmic condition had spiritual beings who evolved within its conditions. These beings, who are now the archai, would have been on the human stage of what is called ancient Saturn. Similar, under new and different conditions, what are today the archangels were upon the human stage of ancient Sun. Today's angels upon ancient Moon. And it is us who develop now on the human stage of Earth. So what were we during old Saturn? To its humans, that is today's archai, we were similarly below them as the solid, the rock, is beneath us as humans upon Earth. On ancient Sun, we were akin to the plant kingdom. On ancient Moon, we were akin to today's animal kingdom. On Earth, we entered the human stage, and thereby we received our ego, our I am. There will be three more cosmic conditions after Earth. It is our goal to become the spirits of freedom and love who will act as the angels for those who will be upon the human stage of the next cosmic condition called Jupiter. After Jupiter comes Venus and then Vulcan. Please do not confuse these names with the existing planets of today's solar system. These follow the names of the days of the week, starting with Saturday. Earth consists of first Mars and then Mercury. We are well into the second half, or the Mercury phase, of Earth evolution. To know about evolution, we must know what came first. We think we must know. The chicken or the egg? Aristotle pondered this and came to the idea of first cause, which would be an eternal, perfect, and uncaused being that initiates all motion and change in the universe without being moved itself. This unmoved mover of Aristotle has some similarities to the concept of the Logos in John's prologue and the works of other philosophers of that time. In John, we read, all things became through him. Perhaps we should take up a similar question. What came first, the living or the lifeless? And we also should ask, do both of these evolve? When we explore evolution, we typically need to agree on a set of assumptions. Science assumes evolution began with the Big Bang. Of course, it wasn't there to see it. Energy began to rapidly change into matter. Well, only hydrogen and helium at first. Did spiritual beings already exist? In the primal beginning, the Logos was. If we first became spiritual beings from either God or from the Logos, then did we already exist at the beginning? Can there be life without physical bodies? Now back to the Big Bang and E equals mc squared. We never seem to ask, what is energy? We know it has no dimensions, it fills no space, and it seems to ignore time. Could energy be roughly the same as spirit? could we say that spirit equals mc squared? What did this Big Bang energy become? I just said hydrogen and helium, but before it was an atom, it was light. That is a state between being energy and being matter. What is light? Early Christianity struggled with the concept of the Trinity. As we heard, the Gospel of John begins with the Logos. In the primal beginning, the Logos was. Time has a beginning, and the Logos is above time. It is also above space and is three dimensions. All things became through him. Were things already created but not yet become? Does this mean that the Logos is the archetype for all things? Who decided the multitude of forms, from crystals to plants to animals to humans? Is there a God of form? Yes. In Greek, it's exousiai. In Hebrew, Elohim. Is our form something that exists spiritually? Yes. Do we ingest the physical so that this form becomes visible within the physical realm? Yes, again. Given that we only sense what is physical, naturally we only consider real what is physical. But anthroposophy dares to say whatever is physical has spiritual behind it as its real reality. Interestingly, as we peer into matter with microscopes, we come to molecules, then atoms, then subatomic particles, which are dimensionless. When we look into it, matter disappears. This downward-facing parabola is often used as a diagram for evolution. We humans have descended from a spiritual existence into physical earthly existence. We are right about here today. This U-shaped diagram depicts what the Elohim had planned. But because we had to develop freedom, this upwards ascension is not a given. It is now well established that during a near-death experience, one perceives a panorama of their life. This panorama exists in this life realm, what we call the etheric. It remains in the etheric realm after death. In Hinduism, this is known as the Akashic record, where life's experiences are recorded. The Greek word used in John's gospel is zoe for this word life. This is what anthroposophy calls the etheric. Here lies everyone's memories. Those receiving organ transplants often report on memories that could not be their own. These memories are not in the brain, nor in the physical aspect of the organ, but in its life, its etheric. How do we know anything about evolution? Thought becomes theory, theory then tested. When theory passes the required test, then it can be deemed to be factual. It is accepted when multiple tests all get the same result, repeatability. But how do we test? Today, the methods for testing, to measure, to count, and to weigh, are all based only on material existence. How could one establish repeatability with something that is living and spiritual? If what is spiritual is alive, is it evolving? Can it still attain repeatability? Our theories are evolving, as are our test methods. I'll read this recent news story. This skull changes a lot of thinking because it suggests that about 1 million years ago, our ancestors had already split into distinct groups, pointing to a much earlier and much more complex human evolutionary split than previously believed, said study co-author Chris Stringer, paleoanthropologist and research leader in human evolution at London's Natural History Museum. The results significantly shift the timeline for species such as our own, Homo sapiens, as well as Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and potentially other archaic humans. One of the great achievements of the past century was Einstein's theory of relativity. Given relativity, does light experience time? No, it does not. Let's look at an example. You look at the night sky and see a star that is 500 light years away. Now imagine that you are that photon from that star that just landed in your retina. For how long did that photon experience itself traveling through space? The answer may surprise you. For the photon, it went directly from its creation to your retina. There was no time, no space, for it was instantaneously received. Let's ask, has time evolved? We think of time as threefold: past, present, and future. This is different from duration or eternity. The expression time flies when you're having fun indicates psychological time is different from measured time. Has time been measured the same in every century? Obviously, no. It used to be based on sunrise to sunrise on the equinox as 24 hours. A sundial was invented to determine the time of day. Later, a sand clock was invented, then a mechanical clock. Now we use atomic clocks that tell us that the Earth's rotation is not consistently 24 hours. Can projections be made based on what we know today? If we measure changes in a 7-year-old child, can we project those out 25 years, 250 years? Might the Earth be a living being? If so, what age is it? We know that there is both matter and antimatter. Could there also be space and anti-space? Could creation in the physical come out of nothing? Certainly, if what's created is a combination of equal polarities, so that a recombination returns all to nothing. But while this existed, did something spiritual inhabit what was physical? Does what is spiritual continue to exist? For both polarities to remain within physical creation, there must be a separator. This is what the caduceus shows us: a staff with two snakes that are in balance around the staff. In physics, we peer into matter, molecules, atoms, subatomic particles that are dimensionless. Matter disappears. It shows itself to be an illusion. Really? Well, then why does the wall stop my hand? The reason? Forces. Well, then what are forces? Are they something spiritual? Who is subject to evolution? Humans are, obviously. What of us evolves? Just our physical body? Have our senses also evolved over time? Did the Greeks see colors the same way we do? What about our soul and its functions, thinking, feeling, and willing? Has there also been an evolution of consciousness? Do animals evolve? If not, why not? What's missing in them for them to evolve? If they do evolve, then do plants? What about the elements of the periodic chart? Do spiritual beings evolve? Does God? Anthroposophy's view of the spiritual world largely agrees with that described in early Christianity by Dionysius the Areopagite. He was a student of St. Paul. His name became the title for the leader of the school of Athens. Hence, the later author of the books describing these spiritual beings was called Dionysius, but has been labeled Pseudo-Dionysius by academic works. These are arranged in three hierarchies with three sublevels in each, making up that hierarchy for a total of 9 levels, hence the term Cloud 9. Our destiny is to become the 10th in this hierarchy. Now let's consider how complicated human nature is, at least in the sense of spiritual science. For it speaks about human nature as having 4 members. First, the outwardly visible physical body. Secondly, the etheric or life body. Then, an astral body. And fourthly, a human ego, the central point of our being. In our physical body, the same forces and substances are present, which are in the physical world outside. In our etheric body lies what calls these physical substances to life. This etheric body is akin to the plant kingdom. Our astral body we have in common with the animals. It is the bearer of the whole life of feeling, of desire, pleasure, and its opposite, of joy and pain. Of the beings of earth, it is only us humans who have an ego, and this makes us the crown of earthly creation. The centaur is an image of what we evolved out of. Well, actually, we are still overcoming our inner animal in our astral body. Often today, people speak of a physical and a spiritual part of the human. Anthroposophy speaks of a threefoldness: body, soul, and spirit. This agrees with the writings of St. Paul, who said the human is soma, psyche, and pneuma. In evolution, the body evolves towards multiplicity, to be the earthly vehicle of the individuality, our I am. It is subject to death. The spirit evolves much more slowly towards unity, to become the Christ in me, the universal I am, which is eternal. The soul mediates between the two, between the temporal and the eternal, between the passing moment and duration. Let's look more at this incredible human body. It consists of trillions of self-sufficient cells. These can be thought of as independent living beings working together. How is it possible that they function together? How does selflessness come about in forming the totality? None of our cells operate in an egoistic manner. Rather, all work in a harmonious way. What causes the cooperation of these small cells? A higher being expresses itself through these tiny living beings. It is your human soul. The soul sees with the cells of the eyes. It thinks with the cells of the brain. It lives in the cells of the blood. Here we can see what community signifies. Union, common unity, means that a higher being presses itself through the unified members. A guild of humans working together receives an archangel to be their group soul. When two or more are gathered in my name. This gives us a picture of the future of our evolution, of humanity overcoming egoism to become the body of Christ. What of the human soul are we aware of today? We know that we can think, feel, and will. These are the three functions of the soul. In 869 AD, at the Eighth Ecumenical Council, the middle diagram was considered. From much earlier times, the soul was considered the mediator between one's spirit and one's body. Apparently, some took this to mean that we had two souls. This Eighth Ecumenical Council declared that we have only one soul, and it operates within the body. In many ways, with the evolution of consciousness and the growth of materialism, this was true to human perception and conception at that time. But this new picture of the human left out the spirit. Now, for our further evolution, this middle picture must return so that we can then progress towards our goal. I have spoken of bodily and spiritual evolution. Here you see in the middle of this diagram our soul evolution. We worked together with our angel to develop sentient soul from about 3000 BC to the Greco-Roman age when we worked on our intellectual soul. That is from 750 BC to 1400, and now the consciousness soul from the Renaissance into our times and further. Our ego is capable of transforming things. This enables it to be used for the greatest good or the worst evil. At this time in evolution, its role is to begin to transform our astral into spirit self, in Hindu manas. In the next age, beginning around 3600 AD, the ego begins work on transforming one's etheric, that's life spirit, that's into life spirit or buddhi. In the last age of this current epoch, from roughly 5700 to 7900 AD, the ego works on the physical, converting it to spirit man or Atman. This transformative work begins during Earth and will continue into those future cosmic conditions. Now you can get a glimpse of how the human reflects the hierarchy, 3 by 3, body, soul, and spirit. I have mentioned that the spirits of form, the Elohim or Exousiai, have a goal for human evolution. It is that we become the spirits of love and freedom. This means that our love will evolve to become agape, while our thinking becomes free and living thinking that shines. In him is life, Zoe. This life is the light of men. We become the 10th hierarchy when or if we achieve this goal. Remember that diagram of the 7 cosmic conditions? After Earth will be Jupiter. There we are destined to be the angels for the next humans. The early animal-like forms of the human, which gradually developed in the course of evolution into our present form, together with the faculties which we already had at that time, came about because our spiritual entity was originally more perfect than it is today, not in terms of intellect, but of imagination. We have to remember always that this original perfection was due to the fact that humans were not free. We were possessed by spirit. Only intellect enables us to become free. By means of our intellect, we can become and have become free. Now, in intelligence bereft of spirituality has taken root among mankind. Imaginative work can be done only when the mood for it is there. And when the mood has seized a poet, that poet must write the poem down at once. And that's how it was in the case of primeval humans. They were never able to do things out of free will. Free will developed gradually, but not wisdom. Wisdom was originally greater than free will, and it must now regain its greatness. That means we have to come back to the spirit by way of the intellect. A return to the spirit precisely in full possession of the intellect, with the intellect fully alive. It is important and must be borne strictly in mind that anthroposophy has nothing at all against the intellect. Rather, the point is that it has to go forward with it. Originally, human beings had spirit without intellect. Then the spirit gradually fell away and the intellect increased. Now, by means of the intellect, we have to regain the spirit. With the spirit regained, if only slightly, then brotherhood, not love by blood or race, but love of individuals can develop, and this will lead to agape love. I just mentioned an evolution of consciousness. In earlier periods of human evolution, souls received much because they were still in their infancy and accepted religious traditions and ideas about the spiritual world in a childlike manner. As a result, they possessed a language for the spiritual life and were able to live in communion with not only nature, but spiritual beings who they experienced in nature. Now we are called upon, particularly in our age, to become ever more independent in our relation to the spiritual world. In this U-shaped diagram, the horizontal lines show how a spiritual impulse in earlier times carries through all of the descent and ascent until it finally completes when the ascent reaches that horizontal equivalent point. For example, as language came from a spiritual impulse out of a common language, so shall we return to a common language, not one that we speak today, but one where the words have harmony with the spirit. Today, we can conceal untruths in what we say. That will not be possible in this future language, which will thereby lead to a very different community life. By listening to what a man says, one will hear his soul through his words. Just as there has been an evolution of consciousness, so there has been an evolution of art. With the Renaissance came the fruits of the intellectual soul development that brought 3D perspective to a 2D canvas. Art moved from painting pictures from spiritual experiences to painting pictures of what moved the soul when it perceived within the physical realm. We are now approaching a time when artists will begin, poorly at first, to attempt to depict the supersensible nature of humans. The artist will no longer see the subject as a combination of bone, muscles, blood, etc., but as the image of an eternal spiritual being. An example of those spiritual impulses was the extrusion of the moon. People laughed at Steiner when he said that the moon came from the earth. But it was established by testing moon rocks that the moon indeed came from the Earth. The current theory is that there was a collision with a smaller planet, and this caused the ejection of the material that has become the moon. Steiner also predicted that something would alter the moon's orbit around the year 6000 so that it would gradually return to reunite with the Earth. Of course, such an event would end life as we know it upon the Earth. Our fifth great epic has 7 cultural ages. Each age has a spiritual impulse. The previous epic was the Atlantean. The deluge brought that epic to an end as the Atlantean continent sunk. Most Atlanteans died, but many were able to migrate. The other lands were inhabited by Neanderthals and others. You all know the name Noah. He was the leader of the Atlantean Sun Oracle and held the title of Manu. His group of migrants settled in what is today the Gobi Desert. From there, he initiated the first 4 cultural ages. The 7 holy rishis that developed the ancient Indian cultural age were his students and taught of the unity of all, such that what we experience of the physical could be deemed illusion. Also, one of Noah's students was Zarathustra, who founded the Persian cultural age. Now came the awareness, I should say, student of the school of Noah. Now came the awareness of polarities, light and dark, for example. Next was the Egyptian Chaldean cultural age, where wisdom of heavens and earth was developed under the concept of Trinity. The 4th cultural age was the Greco-Roman and the coming of the full fourfold human being. Now their statues could stand upright without any supports. Now the falcon god was no longer of Egypt was no longer inspiring the pharaoh, but the human being could think their own thoughts. One could become a Roman citizen. In the 5th cultural age, we face evil out of the freedom we've attained. This battle, mostly an inner battle, should lead us to the establishment of community where brotherhood thrives. The last cultural age must bring this epic to a close. It will be the time foreseen in Matthew 25 and in Revelations, which is called the second fall, when humans self-divide into the good or into the evil. More on this in my next presentation. We understand the work of the ego only when we are clear that a man is subject to reincarnation. All during earthly life, we alternate between awake and asleep. When we sleep, our ego and astral body separate from our etheric and physical body, and they venture into the spiritual world. When we die, our ego and astral body take with them the etheric and leave the physical behind. Long ago, people could remember what happened during sleep, but for the development of freedom, this had to be withdrawn. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi. I'm trying to get a hold of Dan. Could you send his phone to me again?
Dan McCannon?
Yeah.
I can in about 5 minutes. I'm making.
Yeah,
Is that okay? And how will I send it? To email is good. Good.
On the phone would be better because my email's
Okay.
elsewhere.
I'll call you back in about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Sure enough. Bye. By the Middle Ages, one could retain only the dream they were having upon waking. Now we can once again develop a consciousness that can retain some of what happens while we sleep. Some people already are. One in successive incarnations does not belong to one, but to many nationalities, and that which connects them to a specific nationality must be laid aside the moment we go through the gate of death. Nations were once led by an archangel, but these are now progressing further in their evolution. The time of nationhood and patriotism has passed, and such isms of likeness become increasingly evil in our times. What is good is the development of the recognition of each as an individual, which can lead to brotherhood regardless of race, nation, religion, gender, etc. As a new epic begins, the previous ones are recapitulated. We can see this in a child. They have 7-year cycles. The first change of teeth, then puberty, then adulthood, and so forth. Birth is a recapitulation of the deluge. Then, from 0 to 21, we recapitulate the cultural ages of the post Atlantean epic. Thus, the fifth grader recapitulates ancient Greece. This is healthy for the child that that age to have experiences that bring to life ancient Greece, such as its Olympics. I put together 2 columns with what Lucifer and Ahriman say to us. Remember, you sit in the throne of consciousness for your entity. They can but whisper in your ear unless you abdicate this throne, such as through drugs or alcohol. So Lucifer says, it's blissful up here and yuck down there. Come up here to my heaven, where you will be moral beings, but moral automatons. And you will be full of wisdom, but the wisdom of the last planetary condition. Ahriman tells us, be here now. Nothing else is real. There's only one reality, the physical. Be intelligent beings, but intelligent automatons like me. Be knowledge powerful. Don't let anybody push you around. Lucifer tries to prevent mankind from diving down into the sphere where the Ahrimanic power must be overcome. Christ can stand in such a way as to keep Lucifer and Ahriman apart. The symbol of this balance can be found in the caduceus, where the white and black serpents are present but kept in balance. Men speak of good and evil, but they do not know that it is necessary in the great plan that evil too should come to its peels, in order that those who have to overcome it should, in the very overcoming of evil, so use their force that a still greater good results from it. The good would not be so great a good if it were not to grow through the conquest of evil. Love would not be so intense if it had not to become love so great as to be able to overcome the wickedness and the countenances of evil people. This is already being prepared for, and the pupils are told, you must not think that evil has no part in the plan of creation. It is there in order that through it may come the greater good. It will be possible to find Christ in the world immediately above ours when we shall have become sufficiently ripe. It will not be possible in the future to find Christ in the physical world, but only in the world immediately above, for human beings will not always remain the same. While we are on earth, we are still misled by the illusionary image of death. This new factor will nevertheless be rescued from death. Ever since the mystery of Golgotha, the human etheric body has held something that is not subject to death, and this something does not die with the rest of us. That which we gradually achieve through the influence of the Christ impulse then streams out into cosmic space. And in proportion to its intensity in each of us, it generates a certain force that flows out into cosmic space. And this force will in turn create a sphere around our Earth that is in the process of becoming a sun. A sort of spiritual sphere is forming around the Earth, composed of etheric bodies that have become alive. The Christ light now radiates from the Earth, but there is also a kind of reflection of it that encircles the Earth. What is here reflected as the Christ light is what Christ called the Holy Spirit. This is Whitson since Christ appeared in the etheric in the 1930s. Anthroposophy understands body, soul, and spirit as interdependent during life on Earth and also interpenetrating. So it is difficult to define them neatly. It helps so it helps so see the to see the body as providing the sense organs for the consciousness of the soul, and the limbs to carry out the intentions of the spirit. The soul mediates between body and spirit, bringing information about the spiritual, physical world to the spirit through its experiences. The soul is the locus of our feeling life, essentially sympathy and antipathy. Think of longing and you come close to pure soul. Follow this longing thoughtfully and you will experience it poised between body and spirit. Through instinct and sense perception, the soul works through the body. Through thinking, the soul expresses the spirit. The soul is individual, particular, personal. The spirit is universal, ideal, eternal. The very contrast between the Ahrimanic and the Luciferic will enable them to perceive the third reality. Human beings must consciously wrestle through to an understanding of this trinity of the Christian impulse, the Ahrimanic and Luciferic influences. It is our cosmic duty to complete what came earlier. Steiner mentions that sexual procreation will end around the year. Oh, I didn't want that. This diagram can serve as a summary. It shows the four preceding epochs of Earth evolution and how the spiritual world prepared us, our earthly vehicle, the physical body. This work began with the first cosmic condition, of which the first epoch, the Polarian, recapitulated. Next came the Hyperborean epoch that recapitulated the cosmic condition called Ancient Sun. The Lemurian recapitulated Ancient Moon, and its environment was like a peat bog, full of life in its wetness. Now Earth evolution was done with recapitulation. The Atlantean epoch was the first to be fully about Earth. Firm ground could now appear as the living substances from the Lemurian epoch become solidified, mostly through volcanic fires and other hardening processes. The balance of life and death was met in this middle epoch. The spiritual stream of evolution was to descend into the physical that had been prepared for us by the spiritual world. During this preparatory process, various things came into physical existence. All things became through the Logos. Each epoch has 7 ages. Since time itself has evolved, we cannot assign dates to these ages nor to the epochs. We are now past the midpoint and into the post-Atlantean epoch. I will talk about that in the future in my next presentation. We will need great inner strength to overcome Ahriman and the Ahrimanic beings. But this is what we must do to develop the consciousness soul and an awareness of the etheric realm. The descent into the physical, the so-called fall, was not simply a calamity, but a step that made possible the development of self-awareness and moral individuality. In this sense, the challenges and even the dangers presented by the aromatic forces, by the world of machines and materialism, are not the end of the story, but a chapter in a much greater narrative. Our paradise is not a place handed to us, but a state of being we are called to create, each of us, through our own acts of conscious freedom. Now take your questions. 50 minutes. It's 50 minutes.